This is VOA Africa.
I'm Esther Githo. It's Friday, September 6th. This is Africa 54. Former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has died at age 95. We'll take an in-depth look at his controversial legacy. Zimbabwe doctors strike for higher pay as the nation's inflation outpaces salaries. And in our entertainment segment, we'll hear the beats of Ghanaian rap superstar EL. We begin tonight with the death of former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, who passed away Friday at the age of 95 in Singapore, where he had long received medical treatment. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa announced his predecessor's death on his official Twitter account, calling Mugabe an icon of liberation, a Pan-Africanist who dedicated his life to the emancipation of and empowerment of his people. Mnangagwa said Mugabe's contribution to the history of Zimbabwe and the continent will never be forgotten. Mugabe was initially hailed as a liberator of his country. However, later in life, he was often criticized for human rights abuses that included the beatings, torture, and killings of his political rivals. Western countries imposed sanctions on Mugabe and his allies after his supporters began seizing white-owned farmland in 2000. Zimbabwe's farm output and economy plummeted when the land was given to blacks who had little experience in large-scale farming. The African National Congress has issued a statement mourning the death of Mugabe, saying he came to epitomize the new African who, having shrugged off the colonial yoke, would strive to ensure his country took its rightful place among the community of nations, firmly in charge of its own destiny. Mugabe, who ruled Zimbabwe for 37 years following the end of white minority rule in 1980, is hailed by some as a liberation icon, but others say he destroyed the economy of what was once Africa's breadbasket while rigging elections and terrorizing his people for decades. VOA's Anita Powell reviews Mugabe's life and legacy.
To the very end. Robert Mugabe was the first president of modern Zimbabwe and leaves a complicated legacy after 37 years of increasingly autocratic rule. His longtime deputy, Emmerson Mnangagwa, forced him to resign in 2017 and took his place, but never sought to punish him.
Notable is the founding father of the nation of Zimbabwe.
In 2018, for the first time in decades, millions of Zimbabweans cast their ballots in a poll that did not feature Mugabe. He was among those voters. But the notoriously sharp-tongued leader did not go quietly into retirement.
I fooled into believing that all is well. No, it was not a coup d'etat. Nonsense. It was a thorough coup d'etat.
He defended his legacy.
I have, during that time, during all this time, cried for return, our return to constitutionality, our return to legality, our return to freedom for our people, an environment in which our people would be free.
Many Zimbabweans, many of whom were born after he came to power in 1980, say the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Robert Mugabe was right at first, but somehow he went wrong.
The dashing, eloquent guerrilla fighter negotiated Zimbabwe's independence from Britain in 1979. Early on, he urged Zimbabweans to reconcile after the 15-year civil war that brought about independence. He also initially expanded the education and health systems, making them among the best regarded in Africa. But as time went on, he became more controlling and faced increasing allegations of human rights abuses, repression, and election rigging. The economy collapsed after he led a far-reaching land expropriation program, and both inflation and unemployment soared. But even as he cast his final ballot, he was warmly welcomed by his people, who cheered the man they call by his clan name, Kushungo. Mugabe will be buried at Harare's Heroes Acre Cemetery, his final resting place overlooking a country that, for decades, was inseparable from the man at the top.
Let's listen now to some notable quotes from Robert Mugabe.
There will never be a regime change here. There will always be the people of Zimbabwe in control.
And when I look back, I say, oh Lord, why were these taken before me? And why have I remained so long alone and alive? I cannot answer that.
Now, for more on the life and times of Robert Mugabe, VOA Southern Africa correspondent Anita Powell joins me live via Skype from Maputo, Mozambique. Good evening, Anita. Now, Robert Mugabe has been described in various ways as an autocrat, a liberator. How is he being remembered?
I think his legacy ultimately is going to be a very mixed one. We're already seeing on social media, which is, of course, no place for civility, we're already seeing very wildly differing views on the first leader of independent Zimbabwe, that he was, some people say, in his early days, a liberator, a lion of Africa, and then sunk to be a greedy, corrupt kleptocrat in his later days. So I think ultimately Robert Mugabe will be a mixed bag, and his legacy will be a mixed bag as well.
Now, Anita, the current president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, is also eulogizing Mugabe with very great words of respect, yet Mugabe maintained that he was ousted, he was overthrown in a de facto military coup, part of which how Mnangagwa got into power. How are people reacting to Mnangagwa's statements?
I think many Zimbabweans understand that this is strategic for Emmerson Mnangagwa. He's been very consistent on this point, stressing that Mugabe should be respected, that he's the father of the nation. And that is for one reason, and one reason alone. It's because Mnangagwa needs that legitimacy. If he agrees that Mugabe was a despot and a tyrant and needed to be overthrown, then that makes his rule by effect illegitimate. So it's very important that he smooth this over. I think this is a critical juncture, actually, for Emmerson Mnangagwa to keep the peace in Zimbabwe and kind of cement his legacy as a leader who's going to move Zimbabwe forward and conveniently just kind of forget about this 37-year blip in Zimbabwean history and kind of paint it in a very rosy shade. Because otherwise, if he does give sharp words on the legacy of Robert Mugabe, then it just makes it look like what Mugabe said it was, which was, according to Mugabe, a coup.
Now, if you can summarize in 30 seconds the controversial kind of relationship between him and his opposition, his opponent, Morgan Tsvangirai, how would you describe that? Because they finally came together, but it was really thorny.
It was a problematic marriage when they came together for this coalition government, I believe in 2009, after disputed violent elections. In some ways, some people say that that actually is what eroded Tsvangirai's life, that the stress of it maybe exacerbated his already poor health. And in a way, it might have actually bolstered Mugabe and weakened Tsvangirai, which is a sad end for a leader like Tsvangirai, who was so beloved in Zimbabwe that people called him by his first name, Morgan. And so you have two very, very different men. And it's interesting that Tsvangirai died a year ago, well before Mugabe at a much younger age. But they were true rivals, but they did try to put a good face on it. And in the end, here we are. They're both now no longer with us.
Yes, Anita, thank you so much. VOA's Anita Powell reporting live via Skype from Maputo, Mozambique. Now, reaction to the death of Mugabe has been swift on Friday. In Harare, on the streets bearing his name, Rosemary Moyo spoke about one of Africa's most polarizing leaders.
I think President Mugabe was a leader. Yeah, since he was voted to be the president of Zimbabwe, he led Zimbabwe in a right way. We say, may his soul rest in peace. He was someone who was a man of his words. He could do the right thing. Although in some things, he did the things not in a good way. Like the land reform program, to me, it wasn't a good thing.
Some Zimbabweans living in South Africa had different views of Zimbabwe's longtime leader.
He was just a bad leader. He was an all-around just bad leader. So I don't know how to feel about his person. I mean, at the end of the day, he was still human. You have to respect that fact. But yeah, I don't know how to feel about his person at all.
Now, the African Union ambassador to the United States, Arikana Chihombori Kwao, told VOA Friday that Mugabe was, quote, a man who stood for truth and what was right, and that he stuck to his principle to ensure that black Zimbabweans had access to land. For more perspective on the passing of Robert Mugabe, I'm joined by VOA Zimbabwe reporter Gibbs Dube. Gibbs, welcome back to Africa 54.
Thank you so much.
Now, first of all, you've spoken to a lot of Zimbabweans since this happened. The news broke late in the night here in DC, but in Zimbabwe, they have reacted. What are they telling you?
Now, it appears as if it's a mixed bag. You know, there are some people who really loved the man. They loved the man for many things. One of them is education. They're saying it did very well. You still remember that at one stage, Zimbabwe had a very high literacy rate compared to other African countries. So they are praising him for that. Then there are some who are saying, well, people were educated, but what has happened to their education since now they're suffering. At the same time, with some other people who actually were given land, you know, there was this kind of agrarian reforms, which was something that maybe some people were not waiting for until,
and a lot of people think that's where Zimbabwe went wrong. It used to be the breadbasket of the region, but after the land reforms that pitted the white farmers who knew how to till the land, the huge, you know, pieces of land, and gave them to the black people. And then there was all these issues. Some people say that was the basis and the genesis of Zimbabwe's becoming so poor to what the extent to which we see
Zimbabwe. It really started in 1997 when the former president, the late Robert Mugabe, actually gave some war veterans, 30,000 of them, $50,000 each, you know, as a way of saying, you know, quelling them. They were actually making a lot of noise. Some of them were very poor and so forth. And at the same time, he was engaged in the DRC war. So that actually brought the country down. So it was a time when the country was engaged in certain economic policies, like ESAP. And so it didn't go down very well. And then when he embarked on the land reform program, it became worse, you know, and he was parceling land to his friends.
Now, in a very few seconds, what is being planned for his funeral?
In terms of his funeral, we are told that, you know, the Politburo of the ruling ZANU-PF party is going to hold a meeting and they're going to debate on what is supposed to be done. But it's known that Mugabe is a hero to the ruling ZANU-PF party, even if he was removed from power through a de facto military coup.
Yes.
So maybe they're going to discuss that, but the problem is Mr. Mugabe's relatives don't want him to be buried at the National Heroes Acre.
There's a bit of controversy. Gibbs,
Yes.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your insight into this.
Thank you.
All right. Gibbs Dube is a VOA Zimbabwe service reporter, and we'll be right back.
It could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African Beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. From transparent televisions to smart homes, Germany's IFA Consumer Electronics Fair is showcasing all of the hottest new gadgets. This year's event is all about interconnectedness. Another theme is 5G, with several new phones on display. Of course, it wouldn't be an electronics fair without the latest in television and entertainment technology. Samsung's new 5G smartphone, the Galaxy Fold, is creating major buzz. The device will be priced at nearly $2,000. Samsung says it will offer 5G and LTE-enabled versions of the Galaxy Fold in select countries, including Britain, France, Germany, and the United States. It did not provide release dates. And finally, it may not sound particularly relaxing, but Scottish fitness enthusiasts are turning to pygmy goats to take the tension out of tight shoulders. Goat Pilates is taking off, where the friendly, four-legged 15-kilo creatures jump onto participants' backs. The program's creator says there are a variety of benefits to this unusual type of Pilates, including the therapeutic upside of interacting with animals. And that's what's trending today.
Friday is day 4 of the Zimbabwean government doctors' strike. They are demanding a sizable wage increase to cover the soaring cost of living. The doctors, like many government workers, say inflation is making it impossible to meet basic needs. Columbus Mavunga has more from Harare.
Zimbabwean doctors are on strike for a significant salary boost. They say they won't resume working until they get one. Doctors there currently make about $200 a month.
I think government should expedite the negotiations regarding our cost of living allowances.
Last month, the government offered a 60% raise, but the doctors turned it down, saying the inflation rate for food, fuel, and housing costs is about 900%. This hospital is now taking only serious cases and referring others to private hospitals. 85-year-old Vasinara Julius is one of those turned away, according to her husband.
She has not been attended to. We were asked to go to a private hospital for more tests. I have sent my kids to go and check how much it costs. It is more expensive at a private hospital. She needs 5 tests done.
With its economy in steady decline, Zimbabwe social services have been funded lately by foreign donors such as the European Union and the U.S. Agency for International Development. But the assistance has not been extended to salaries, resulting in low morale among health staff. Nonetheless, Zimbabwe's health minister says doctors are needed on the job.
We also expect that our workers stick to the fact that they are in an essential service. As an essential service, you cannot just work up and disappear, and leave your patient alone. We have to act responsibly. We have to act in a manner which will not risk the patients' lives.
He says a health services commission will deal with the issue of Zimbabwe doctors indefinitely striking by banning work stoppages. In the meantime, public hospitals are operating on a reduced staff and patients are waiting for care. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare.
3 words resonated like a refrain during Pope Francis' whirlwind tour of Mozambique: hope, peace, and reconciliation. Tens of thousands of faithful from across the continent packed a Maputo Stadium to hear that message and take it with them. Once again, here's VOA's Anita Powell.
Neither rain, nor cold, nor distance kept tens of thousands of faithful from coming to receive the blessing of the leader of the Catholic Church. Pope Francis packed the stadium Friday outside Maputo, giving Mozambique his final blessing before proceeding to the second leg of his Africa tour. He left Friday for Madagascar. It has been a whirlwind 3 days in the southeastern African nation, packed with issues that straddled faith and politics. He was greeted Wednesday night by President Filipe Nyusi, who's running for re-election in October. His main message was for reconciliation after leaders recently signed a peace deal that hopes to end decades of low-level conflict. But it was not all pomp and ceremony. The pontiff also met with HIV and AIDS patients at a church-run hospital outside Maputo. He also emphasized the effects of climate change.
I would like my first words of closeness and solidarity to be addressed to all those struck by cyclones Idai and Kenneth, whose devastating effects continue to be felt by so many families, especially in those places where it is not yet possible to rebuild, because they require this special attention.
In this deeply religious nation, which is predominantly Christian, with Catholics having the largest share, many said this was a once-in-a-lifetime event.
I'm here to thank the Pope, our leader, in order to have peace.
Mansane Rantakoa took an overnight bus from the tiny nation of Lesotho to see the pontiff.
Mozambique is not unique. Lesotho has its problems, and we felt that coming to join Mozambique with the visit of the Pope, maybe we'll get lucky second time around, and then he can visit Lesotho because we need him, we need his prayers.
That's a message that thousands of Mozambicans are taking to heart. Anita Powell, VOA News, Maputo.
In our Friday entertainment segment, Heather Maxwell, the host of VOA's Music Time in Africa, and Kwame Ofori speak with Ghanaian music superstar EL about his journey on the Ghanaian and international music scene. Today we're featuring new music from EL's latest project called The Link Up. Let's feel the beat.
All right, hey everybody. So now it is time to finally meet our very special studio guest, EL. You've got a new album out. We're going to talk about that and listen to one of the songs. But first, let's go back and introduce you musically to everybody. So one of my favorite songs from your earlier career is Obumo. What does that mean?
Obumo is it's a question. So it's like, imagine an adult asking a kid Obumo. It means, don't you have any respect?
Ah.
Yeah, so basically that's what it means.
All right, let's listen to a little bit of that.
Come on, dog your boy, I'll be true baller. It be money we go spend, I go do all that. We they chop the pan, we know they $1.
When was this song out?
This song came out around 2010, I can imagine. Yeah, around 2010, 2011.
Can you take your glasses off? Or,
yeah.
So people can see. Oh,
there
he is.
There I am.
There he is.
Hello. I was outside for a second.
So how many albums have you put out so far?
So far, I have 2 official studio albums.
Okay.
But I have countless mixtapes and uncountable singles out.
So you produce all the time?
I produced in my career so far. I've produced about 95% of all the songs that I have out so far. Wow. Yeah.
How old are you?
How do I look?
No.
When you women do it, and when you guys do it, it's okay.
But when we do it,
I'm only as old as I look.
You look like you're about 30.
Exactly.
Okay, I know this game. I know this game. All right, so you've been on top of the music scene in Azonto and
Afrobeats,
Afrobeats, hip life.
hip-hop. I came into this industry with the intention to break as many rules as I can musically. I was told in the beginning, stick to a lane and pick a sound and stick with it. But I went the opposite direction of that. So I'm a hip-hop artist. I do hip life, Afrobeats, anything that I can express myself musically as. I go for it.
This song, we're going to hear another one. I loved this. When Kwame turned me onto it a few years ago, I was like, oh, I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and the video.
Yes, the video too. Right.
All right, so let's just turn it on. Agbaja.
Yes, sir.
My people, they see me, then they holla. L, I carry like Okada. Me hon trap, my share me hon kama. Call me Mr. Lover, man, I no be shabba. Remember the time where I no get gaba. We they holla from Madina to Washai. My me, then my brother, fi Waka Sahara for Shada. Now I'm #1 rapper.
Okay, so I'm trying to get EL to sing to this song or to rap to it, and he says, what do you say, EL?
I have thousands of songs. Don't put me on the spot.
He forgot. He forgot, Charlie.
Charlie, I forget, Charlie.
Then they holla. Yeah.
All right, so that was Agbaja, long time ago. Now we are on to today's project with EL. So we've got a new album out.
Yeah.
It's called Link Up, L-I-N-K-O-P,
Yeah.
The Link Up. What are you referring to about that?
The link up just refers to the synergy that my friend AI and I have. You know, we've been around each other in the industry for a while, but we never really made a lot of music together. So it felt like we were finally linking up to create something.
Oh, so, okay, so you're with AI on this whole album.
On the whole album, yes.
And
Wow.
it's a perfect marriage.
Yeah.
It's a perfect marriage.
Yeah.
All 7 songs are perfect.
Yes.
Oh, yes. It's hard for me to say that.
For you. Yeah, I know.
It's hard for me to say that.
Coming from you, it's a big compliment.
So the album is released now, or is it about to be released?
It's out. We released it a few weeks ago.
Okay. Well, let's listen to a little bit of A Juma.
Let's check it out.
If you know they talk about dough or one bone, don't call my blood clock phone. Respect to the most high one. The in they give me vim, so I must ride on. See, I think about the things I want. Go out and go get it. See the things I've done. Some long me, follow me, icon. Come on, sing along, Charlie, sing my song. Everything I want. From legal to illegal, I'm inside one. And every day with the seaside on, it's a war outside. That's the scene I'm from. And though the enemies might come, we can't stop the hustle in the streets, my dance. So more money, more dough, more goodie, more egg. Let me got to feed my fam, you know.
It has been such a pleasure to meet you and listen to some of this music. I just can't wait to listen to the rest of the album.
Same here.
This was EL with Kwame,
Yes.
Heather, Music Time in Africa.
That's our show for today. Have a great weekend, everyone.